Welcome to Event Experience by Bizzabo, the podcast where we bring the best and brightest event experience leaders together to share stories, tips, and lessons learned from creating some of the world's biggest events. I'm Rachel Moore, your podcast host. In this special episode of Event Experience, I welcome back Oren Berkovich, co-founder of Projectory and panelist from Bizzabo's webinar, The Future of Event Networking, Smarter Matches, Better Conversations. Oren's experience as an entrepreneur and architect of choice in the events industry figures heavily into the insights you're about to hear surrounding the significance of personal agency in event participation, crafting experiences that cater to diverse audience needs, and the challenge of proving ROI to stakeholders. Examples are sprinkled liberally throughout this latest episode of Event Experience. Welcome back to another episode of Event Experience, everyone. And I'm very pleased to welcome back a guest that you may have heard on a recent webinar that Bizzabo did. And I'm very pleased. We do these kind of webinar 2.0s, if you will, to invite panelists back to dig deeper and take more time that is available to us via this podcast. Today, I'm really happy to welcome back, I think some of us can relate to this, someone who has founder in their DNA, someone who just really likes to create new ideas, launch companies and projects and things like that. So if that's you who's listening or watching the podcast right now, get ready because you're about to meet a kindred spirit. As the co-founder of Projectory, our guest's mission is to make our events reality, one with less talking heads and more heads talking, which we all like. We're about to have more heads talking right now. He's also a Bizzabo veteran, so we have a little favoritism going on here. Pleased to welcome back Oren Berkovich to the microphones here in the podcast rather than in a webinar. But Oren, thank you so much for joining us on Event Experience today.
Thanks for having me.
Let us segue into some get to know you questions. There might be some familiar ones here. There might be some new ones here. But as we mentioned, you're an extrovert. You might be okay with being put on the spot. So here we go. First one. When you have a really long event day ahead of you, what are you wearing on your feet? What are your event day shoes?
Sure, I have a lot of experience, but also many years of being alive, which now means I have to wear comfortable shoes. It will be some sort of sneakers that look kind of fancy, and I could pull it off. As I dress pretty casually, even for events. So you're not going to see me wearing a suit. I definitely don't own a tie. And I think that means I can get away with shoes that are somewhat fashionable, but extremely comfortable. That's probably be my go-to.
Nice. Hey, I am right there with you. It's all about the comfort nowadays. So, and really should be for everybody. Y'all, if you're not of a certain age, you're going to get there. Trust us. Your feet need to still work. Is there anything that you are listening to or watching or even reading these days that you can't put down?
I listen to a lot of podcasts and content. I'm sure a lot of the listeners read Priya Parker and know about The Art of Gathering. I think that is one of those books that helped really capture a lot of the things that I kind of knew by doing, but never really articulated in writing. And I think she did an excellent job in putting that together. So if people haven't read that, that will definitely be a first thing to check. But maybe a less known one is, I think it's called something like, I can pull it up, The Surprising Impact of Liberating Structures. And you're like, what is that? Is that physics? Is that, and it's all about events and facilitation and how you can create different structures that unlock conversations. And it's a pretty dense book, but it's not a hard read, and it's more in a manual than, thought leadership piece. So I think that is maybe an less known one that some people would benefit from. That's maybe different than other popular things like The Art of Gathering.
I love that. Thank you. We definitely haven't heard about that one on the podcast yet. So that's a great one. Sounds and a manual. Y'all, go get a manual for how to do this stuff. I mean, it's essentially what we're trying to do right here. So it's awesome.
Let me make sure I get the name right. Here it is. So The Surprising Power of Liberating Structures. I was pretty close. Yes.
You were very close. But yeah, I definitely would have thought of architecture or something. And you're like, No, but it is about events, which is, like you said, architecture. So I love
Mhm.
that we're here. Is there any particular social post or a piece of media or even a hot take about events that you found very interesting lately
Mm.
or even polarizing or shocking?
This is might be a recency bias because I've been seeing things around it. People are very worried about where things are at with
Yeah.
the economy, with events, with the uncertainty that's in the market. And there's definitely, a few event influencers, or I guess people who are very active on LinkedIn, that hit my feed with their point of view of what needs to happen, or their point of view of how coming out of the pandemic, and this is like another moment for the event industry and things along those lines. So, I mean, I can't say that there's anything there in particular that I'm like, oh, I'm going to write this down and use that, to plan my strategy. But it's definitely something that I think people are very much thinking about. Yeah, I think we all are in some ways, whether you're in events or not. It just seems to be increasing uncertainty with everything, really, work,
Mm.
life, and whatnot. So, yeah, I think that's definitely top of mind.
I would agree. It's definitely what's in my feed lately, and even like journalistic entities in the events industry are covering it pretty rigorously. So
Mhm.
let's all hang in there, y'all.
Maybe one particular thing to call out, which will also enable us to get somewhere more optimistic. I listened to an interview with Sam, I think it was Sam Altman, or yes, it was definitely like one of the leaders in the AI companies, with one of the reporters, journalists. You know what it was? It was Hard Fork, the podcast Hard Fork
Yeah.
from New York Times. It's just two tech guys talking through tech news and whatnot. It's very good. Like, it's one of my favorite podcasts.
Good.
Definitely highly recommended. They're funny, they're smart, everything is well researched. They recently had a leader from, I think it was, oh yeah, here it was. Sorry, it's coming to me live. They brought in, it was after Google's recent event, they brought in one of the leaders of DeepMind. It's part of Google's AI
Yeah.
group, and they talked about where things are headed and things like that. But there was actually a segment there where the guy was talking about events and things that will happen in real life. And you and I had a quick back and forth on this as part of the webinar, when you asked me about AI and where I
Yeah.
think things are headed. And it was very encouraging to hear somebody who is at the forefront of this really call out the increase of importance, and I guess the desire
Mm.
people will have for real life connection,
Yeah.
for meeting people in the same place, having a live conversation. That is something that I think the more AI becomes part of our life, the more live events and in-person experiences will see uh, increase in demand and
Yeah.
value. So,
Good one. That's really good and very timely. And like you said, it drives back to what we were talking about in the webinar and having you back here too. I gave, the founder stuff and where you are right now. And I want to give you the opportunity for our audience to know a little bit more about you. Tell us what are you doing in your day-to-day role at Projectory? Kind of what led you to that and just more that you want to share about it, please.
yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, it is true. If I kind of look back and connect the dots, a lot of the things that I've been involved with was things that I founded and started. So it took me a while to kind of call it out, but I think now, from a track record, I feel complete calling myself an entrepreneur. I think I've done enough to justify that title. So I'm an entrepreneur. I created different projects, different companies, different products in the event space. And yeah, the day to day now is very much focused on this kind of recent company called Projectory, which in some ways really brings together, I'd say, over a decade of different things that I've done in events, and also brings together different people that I've kind of made friends with, did work with over the last decade. But Projector is very much like the thing that right now keeps me busy, very busy, all day, every day, and is the thing that I'm most excited about. Mostly because I think in the kind of decade till starting Projectory, a lot of my work was, in some ways, services. I was
Mm.
selling my time, I was selling my expertise. Even when I was selling tickets and sponsorships, at the end of the day, the events that I've put together were an experience that, I was selling. And now with Projectory, we're very much in the product space, in the physical space. We have a warehouse, we have a shipping company, we're actually moving physical things, and it's a whole other business. And that's my day to day now, is moving that forward, building more scale, more products, more ideas, and keeping the momentum.
Well, I would say for anyone who is into founding things, you got to keep that momentum. And so it sounds like you are the right person to be doing all that. I'm so glad you let us know more too, just about kind of what brought you there. I know we even talked offline a little bit about a huge draw for these podcast episodes is experience. And it's all in the name, event experience. You have event
Mhm.
experience. We're about to draw that from you. And I hope you're ready because
Let's
I'm
do
going to
it.
gonna make sure that we are conveying all of that to everyone who's listening and watching. So, as I mentioned, this is a webinar 2.0, if you will. We had you on as a panelist in a recent webinar by Bizzabo called "The Future of Event Networking: Smarter Matches, Better Conversations." In that webinar, we had a segment where we had you all to ourselves. And when I say we, I mean me. I was moderating that webinar. It was just you and me digging into some audience engagement questions. But I think we all realize that webinars have time constraints, where there's
Mhm.
only, everybody shows up at a certain time and then we got to get through all the content within like a half hour or an hour. And so let's dig deeper. We're using this opportunity to expand and take some more time with you. I'm very excited about that. So during that, when we were had you in that segment, you brought up a common pitfall of event organizers when it comes to engaging their audiences, and you mentioned that there's lack of intention and thoughtfulness. Now, everyone listening right now will be like, "Wait, I have tons of intention. I totally am thoughtful about this stuff." And it's like, we all strive for it, but we still can fall short. And I think we can all be guilty of that too, particularly like with bandwidths and time and team sizes and things like that. I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who didn't see or hear the webinar, but you made a great analogy to a very common experience folks have. I'm talking about restaurants. So I'm now gonna lob this over to you. When it comes to being thoughtful and having intention with audience engagement, tell us more about that. I just want to hear your take on that, your philosophy.
Yeah, 100%. And I can kind of briefly repeat that analogy for those who might be listening and haven't seen the webinar. Yeah. So, when you think about it, walking into a restaurant, you immediately feel a certain way. And you might not realize that, but a lot of it is a result of many, many, many design choices that people that put that restaurant together, that experience together made. Anything from the type of furniture, the volume of the music, what's hanging on the wall, how strong the lights are, what tone the lights are actually, who's greeting you at the door, and what is that like? Like all of that is are design choices that somebody made. And you walking in, and you might not be an architect or an internal designer or none of those experts, but because of the accumulation of all of these different decisions, you feel a certain way and you have a certain experience. And in
Mhm.
some ways, when we, anything that we do is basically a result of some design choices that people have made. And when you think about kind of bringing it back to events, and whether it's networking or whether it's a keynote or whether it's a walk-in experience or whatnot, it's ultimately down to the event planners, the production company, the program designer, the different stakeholders involved. There is a set of decisions that need to be made that are going to create a structure, create a place, create a time for people to lean in and experience what you've put together. And so the analogy there is really around thinking about all these little details. It really, the magic is in the details. And if you think about all these different elements well in advance, with intention, with thoughtfulness, and we can provide some examples, you're going to end up creating a better experience for your audience.
So I do want to hear some examples. Actually, I thought of one myself even. So My stepfather used to be a hotel manager for a major chain, and they created a steakhouse or built a steakhouse on one of the properties. And he did something like this. So it was a steakhouse. And so, as you can imagine, everyone uses steak knives to cut into steak. Those of you who eat steak and you have done this before and you know, he would do a thing where they'd bring out a selection of steak knives so the person could hold the knife in their hand and kind of decide like, yes, this is my jam, or this fits my hand, or this feels weighted and feels nice. It was just that little thing that kind of set it apart from other steakhouses locally, that, hey, this is part of that really kind of exclusive experience you want. That's just one example. And again, it
Yeah.
correlates to what you were saying about like a restaurant where, hey, that wasn't, they didn't have to do that, but that's what they decided to do. Do you have some other examples relating to events that
100%.
love it?
I mean,
Bring it.
I think that just to build off what you shared, what happened there is a decision to give some personal agency
Mhm.
to the person who is about to dine to curate their own experience. And I think, it could be choosing a knife at a steak restaurant, but it also could be which breakout to go to,
Mhm.
right? At the end of the day, giving people personal agency enables them to curate their own experience and ultimately go through something that they're the most curious about or they're most interested to go into or have the most learning opportunity or whatnot. But even there, like if you double click that, I assume that in your example there weren't 15 steak knives to choose from,
Mhm.
right? Because that also could be a bad experience for people when there's decision fatigue or choice
Mhm.
overload. And you see that in programs too, where you have, 7 different breakouts to go to. And then it's going to end up not leading to the best experience because it might take a long time. If you would put like 7 different knives in front of me, so it'll take me a while to pick one, and I will definitely wonder if I picked the right one, and I might regret it. And then, bringing back to the event space, you see people going to this breakout, and then like 2 minutes in, no, I should really have gone to this other breakout, and they leave the room and go to the other breakout. So I think choice is one of these levers that is definitely like net positive if done well. And I would put that in the giving people personal agency
Yes.
category.
I love that. Thank you for sharing that too, because I think we can all relate. We've probably all attended events as well as designed them, but you really are trying to create this, oh, let me give you this whole buffet of things to choose from. It is absolutely possible to go a little too much, too many choices where the person's like, I don't know. Some of that can correlate. Maybe they met somebody there and they're like, well, I'll go with you to this one because I just really want to sit and chit chat some more and go to this event or to the session. Or maybe it's like, no, I came here specifically to learn this thing or to be able to see this speaker or even to be in this room and I'm going to go over there. So, but I totally agree. Like, and even in that situation that I was describing, you had people around the table. This can correlate to events too. They made a different steak knife selection. So now you can actually like, how's yours? Well, how is yours different than
Mhm.
mine? And stuff like that. But that happens at events, right? Where again, that audience engagement, not only is it about the choices, being intentional about here's letting you choose your own destiny, but now and also talk to other people about, well, what destiny did you choose? And then they want to be like, well, did I choose the right destiny? And so they can compare notes a little bit that way too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And more than that, you can even facilitate that because I think in
Mm,
some ways it will happen organically, especially if people, there's the team members that go together and one go to this breakout, the other goes to that. They might connect after and say, hey, what did you learn there? But there's also a way of doing that at scale and really celebrate that and creating space for people to share more of their experience. So I think ultimately, and we can definitely spend, this entire time and a lot more time digging into run of show design,
right.
because in some ways that is that single document that holds in it huge potential to create an experience. And a lot of these design choices are going to reveal themselves in the run of show. So
Yeah.
specifically on this breakout example that we've been building on, deciding that we're going to start everybody together in a general session and then break into breakouts and then come back into a general session, which is now a pretty common best
Mm,
practice, I would say. You want to
yeah.
start and end together, everybody, if possible. But You could also decide that when you come back from breakouts, do some of this sharing that you refer to that happens organically. You can do it with the entire room.
Yeah.
If there's three, four, five breakouts, there's definitely people in the room that decided to go to one and will benefit from some of the conversations that happen in the other. So how do we create some of that share up when we come back to the room? It's not necessarily that the general session and the main room is only for information download. You can absolutely create conversations in that room. And maybe, especially if people are sitting in rounds, maybe in a single round table, there'll be people from three, four different breakouts. So
Yeah.
how do you create some structure that enable them to share what they learned and maybe share with other tables? All of that is possible. And honestly, none of this is complicated, but it requires intention and it
Mhm.
requires thoughtfulness. And all of it is going to be found in that run of show document. That is the single thing that I would look at to get a feel for what the event is like.
That's such a great point, and hopefully everyone is creating that runner show, at whatever stage you are in your career. But one more analogy that made me think of, I don't know if, for anyone who's ever gone to like a community meeting or even like a church or something like that, there are so many times they'll say, "Hey, everybody, now take like a minute or two to greet your neighbor," or say something to them. But maybe like an event could do that. Hey, we're back in the room. We're going to give everyone, 2 minutes to say hi to the people around you, and not only to introduce yourself, but also say what session did you just come from. And maybe that could be like, okay, maybe you don't have time in that 2 minutes to say, oh my God, what did you get out of that session? Because I wanted to go to that one. But like you said, there's just those moments you can actually say, yep, in addition to organically letting this happen, let's set the stage so that people will want to connect later, and maximize like, hey, now you've got an in into that person who went to the session you didn't go to, compare notes and, compare those steak knives.
Yeah, 100%. And I honestly, I think that in some ways, event planners and people who are putting runs of shows together and whatnot, like their role at the basic level is to make sure that the event runs smoothly,
Mhm.
that AV is working fine and people show up and nobody gets injured. It's almost like the Maslow, pyramid of needs in some ways. But
Yeah.
the higher up you get there, the more I think you as an event planner can see yourself as a designer of these interactions, a creator of structures that enable it, right? A lot of that stuff will happen organically, but what can you do
Mm.
in your control, which is massive ultimately? If you're the event planner, like you're going to design all these details, you have all these levers to pull on. How are you going to set this up to make it the most likely for the most impact to happen at that table, at that
Yeah.
conversation, during that break, when people walk out? All of that is in our control as event planners. And so, uh, I love to see when people kind of step up to seeing themselves as those kind of architects of choice and designers of experience beyond making sure everybody gets fed and put bums in seats, so to speak, you know?
Yeah, I love the phrase you just used, architects of choice. I think we're gonna make sure that's a soundbite that everyone takes out of this one, coined by Oren Berkovich, everyone. So
I can't claim that I've, made this up, but I do think that architecture is
mm,
a good descriptor there because ultimately it's not just about selection. I
yeah,
think you are actually designing something there that
yeah,
requires intention.
yeah. Well, and my next question really kinda pivots nicely off what you were just saying. As event planners are, you have all these choices you can bake in. You really can craft how your audience experiences every moment of the event you're designing. It figures in that now we need to consider the audience itself and what differences they might have between one person to the next. So I'd like to ask you a question that I was able to ask our other webinar panelists in a different segment of that webinar, but I didn't get the chance to ask you. Do you identify as an introvert, an extrovert, or something in between? And then I'd love you to share, like, why does that matter to event planners when they're considering this audience engagement and, crafting or being the architect of this experience for each person who attends?
I can definitely be introvert in certain situations, but generally speaking, I'd say I'm I'm an extrovert. Like I love talking with people. Yeah, I figured. Um, love talking to people. I, get a lot of energy from getting people's perspectives and points of view.
Hmm.
It drives a lot of my decision making. Is I'm not going like deep into, research and kind of, I don't know, deep thoughts on it. I'm going out and everywhere. I want to hear what everybody has to say. I want to get all the information. And then this a lot of time drives my decision. And when it comes to meeting new people, for me, and again, like I've only been the experience of being myself, so I don't know how it's like for others, but a lot of I think what's driving me being an extrovert is actually curiosity. I'm
Mm,
actually interested in getting people, like understanding how what other people do, why do they think that way? Like, it's just, if I'm in a room full of people, I feel like there's such a huge learning opportunity
yeah.
that that drives me stronger than maybe the awkwardness of asking somebody how he's doing and why they're here. I think that is definitely how I would identify. Well, even the example you provided earlier around turn to the person next to you and ask them to share their experience from the breakout is going to feel different to different people.
Right.
Some people might not be into that as much. And some people will love the opportunity to turn to the person next to them and talk to them about it. This is why a lot of times I think creating activities that match two people is oftentimes, in some ways, less inclusive because it's more
Mm.
prone to having people who feel differently about it. Like, what if you were really shy and you were turning to the person who actually is, you know, and maybe the person next to you is, I don't know, maybe you're, there's just so many dynamics that could go wrong. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's going to, it's more prone to things going wrong or even if not wrong, perhaps not as optimal. This is why from a design perspective, I always lean towards, it depends on the scale, but round tables that have more people around them. There's no good or bad when it comes down to sharing and talking to other people, right? You can't really design for one particular kind of attendees. So when you have a few people around the table, I think even if somebody who is really shy and, introvert and doesn't want to participate, you give them an opportunity to not do it, right?
Yeah.
And at the same time, you might have somebody at the table who ends up being like the loudest voice and take over the conversation. So, I think there's just more rounds that you could kind of smooth out when you
Yeah.
have more than two people.
Yeah. It makes me think of another friend of mine. She does leadership development and team building. And there's always so I can be one of those people. Hopefully I've metered myself over the years to where I'm more than happy if I'm sitting in a round, and you probably can relate to this too. Like if nobody's talking first, we're ready to be like, okay, I'll go first. Just to get the ball rolling or whatever.
Hmm.
But then there's the person, and I have definitely done this in the past, where we just prattle and prattle on, and nobody else has a chance to talk because, well, I'm so used to talking, and obviously, and they might assume, well, nobody else wants to talk, so somebody should fill this dead air. And it's like, well, wait, we might be able to elicit some conversation out of an introvert given the right set of circumstances. One thing that my friend has done is she's got like, and this anybody can do this, and I've seen this at events as well. If you're talking like a typical like a round table, you're letting people kind of gather. Maybe you've assigned them to sit there, or they have just kind of gravitated there. But now you're sitting near possible strangers, maybe some people you already met. But to actually have on that table say optional, or maybe you mandate it, but say, hey, everybody talk through the points on this card. Ask the question, everybody has to go around and answer, but they're also able to not. But you can, like you said, like you can bake that in to say, I am setting this up to where you don't have to feel like, oh, I'm at the behest of the loudest person at the table. No, there's a
Yeah,
guide here that you are able to provide to people. So just one example of how, yes, you can, like you said, make sure you're allowing for those things to organically happen based on the type of engagement that person is comfortable with.
100%. And even, I would say small tweaks like first having people write down something
Mm,
before you actually have a table conversation, because a lot of times what makes people feel uncomfortable sharing is the fact that they're put on spot. And
Yes.
so saying, hey, we're going to do a 10-minute table conversation, but first we want to take a minute for each of you to write down what is the most important thing that's still unsaid in this conference. Write it down.
Nice.
And then, you could go a step further and have, there's just so many things you can do. So to me, like, this is the thing that I'm been very passionate about is thinking about every little tweak, little experiment, little design choice that you can make that will make this experience better, even if it's a 10-minute table share out. How are you going to do it so then more people will participate? So more output will be captured. So more good conversations are going to happen. I could spend days just wondering about that and then come up with an experiment. And then, this is really how we roll at Projectory. Like we would
Yeah.
design a lot of these little interactions and then do a full debrief and come out with like a list of experiments that we want to try next time. And we would do it again and again and again until we basically over the years came up with a lot of what we call signature moves. It's these little things that we have perfected and we now know they work. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? If you do this thing, it will work, and it will work with at a conference with 350 coin collectors and the average age is 70, which is, a real event that we were part of at some point. And it will work with, a very young demographic startup that brought their users together
Yeah.
because we've perfected these moves. In my world, like it's that is the work. It is understanding how the dynamic works, so
Mhm.
then you could make it more reliable and more impactful every time we run it.
We'll be right back with more event experience after the break. Hey, event professionals, do you want to hear more from the industry's top event experience leaders? Don't miss out on future episodes of the Event Experience podcast by Bizzabo. Hit subscribe, drop us a review, and share this episode with your friends and colleagues. The Event Experience podcast by Bizzabo, where events come to life. We're back with Oren Berkovich to accept the challenge of proving the ROI of audience engagement. That sounds like a gold mine list of your signature moves, and everybody's probably like, "What are those?" So we'll toward the end of the episode, we'll have a means for people to find you online, and they can harass you for. Don't harass
Sure.
anybody. Just ask him nicely, and he might share it, and you could carry on that conversation. Speaking of signature moves, things that work. I want to ask you this because I think what I'm about to ask you is probably a bit of a problem area for a lot of event planners out there. You need audience engagement. You need it to happen. And it's so the audience feels like, hey, I had a meaningful experience at your event. But there's also this lingering question in behind the scenes, and sometimes maybe more front and center is ROI. You've got
Hmm.
stakeholders who are like, audience engagement, that's nifty. How is that helping my bottom line? How is that proving this event was successful? How is that figuring into the net add of this event to our business, our brand? Are we glad we did it? Is it worth doing again? Is it worth investing more in or keep investing in it? So I wanted to ask you this, like, do you have examples like of how you've had to prove the ROI of audience engagement? How do you confront that question? And maybe even share like, has it been a struggle? Or you're like, hey, but no, I have a way that works. But I would love to hear your take on it regardless, because it's a hard nut to crack for all event planners to bring that vibe ROI in.
Yeah. I mean, I think this whole category of measurements in events is tricky and also
Yeah.
depends from event to event. A lot of events that I'm involved with, there is no like I think ROI is particularly relevant for maybe external events, maybe events
Mhm.
that are trying to drive business outcomes that are monetary,
Yeah.
and therefore stakeholders feel like, oh, we should be able to measure it, right? How many leads have we generated? How many of these leads actually ended up in a deal? Like, why can't the event people tell me what is the ROI on this event? And the reality is, and what this is what makes it difficult, right? And I don't think this is like groundbreaking insight here, but a lot of times, you might run into somebody that you haven't seen in a while, and 3 months down the line, that reminds you of a conversation that you had way before, and it's hard to attribute that whatever deal or interaction to, oh, it's because I ran into you 3 months ago at that event, but
Yeah.
it could very much be because of that. And so I think there's a lot of that challenge that's going on when it comes to measuring ROI.
Yeah.
Internal events are less of an issue, right? Like you're bringing people together to talk about your strategy, to talk about, I don't know, whether it's a sales kickoff or whatnot. So to answer specifically your question about how do we measure ROI using engagement, at the end of the day, any information that's sharing from stage is going to land better when people are immersed in it.
Yeah.
Because if you're just talking at them, they're not paying attention. They're going to be on their phones. They're going to be looking at something else. They're going to like, and you see it. There's so many events that I'm part of, and we're waiting for our session and whatnot, and we're in the room, and you just look around, and nobody's looking up.
That's right.
Everybody's on their phones, and so if you wanna talk to people about ROI, and the people who are asking you about ROI as an event planner, they're people too, and they've attended events too. And I
Yeah.
think they know that events that are super information dense are a drag to sit through. Nobody
Mhm.
wants to sit there and be talked at and and look at slides for all day long. You should just record it and send it to people. So if you're bringing people together, it is about getting them connected. It's about peer learning. It's about networking. It's about working through objectives. It's about ideating. It's about prioritizing. Like you
Mhm.
want to give them something to do. So by the end of it, you lean into the modality of people being there in real life. And the ROI there, in my mind, is, I mean, sure, like you can measure NPS scores, but you can also read the reviews of what people, those who answer the survey will tell you. They want less content. They want
Right.
less presentations. They want more connection, more, Q&A, more discussion. Uh, and
Yeah.
so a lot of times I'm not the person that needs to pitch to people why engagement is necessary. They get there on their own.
Yeah.
It's really the question of how do you do it well that I'm trying to answer.
Mm.
And it's the work that I do. People come to us typically when they either heard it from their audience or they experience it themselves. They don't want a full day of presentations.
Yeah. You're bringing forth all these examples I can even think of in my own experience. My family goes to our local Comic-Con here in Denver every
Hmm.
year. They don't call it Comic-Con anymore because San Diego took that name and trademarked it, so nobody else can use it. That's okay. It's a pretty big deal in San Diego. But one thing I always think about, so they have sessions, they have panels, and a lot of them are celebrities or there's fandom associated with each
Hmm.
person that's on the stage. One thing I've always appreciated about that kind of thing, because I feel like this can still correlate to a very like a B2B event that is just super rich of like, here's how to, here's about technology, maybe there's a session about AI. And you got a couple experts on the stage about AI. But at the end of every session at Comic-Con, they always have a Q&A, with open there's mics on the aisles, and people can just walk up and ask a question. Are the questions sometimes a little, like, off into the cosmos a little bit? Yes, but the whole room, everybody's reading the room and stuff, but it still gives that person like, "Hey, I got to get up, you see me from the stage and acknowledge me, and I get to ask the question that is on my mind." And what's great about that is inevitably there's going to be someone else in the audience that had the same question or a similar question, and they're like, "Oh, that's a great question. I was wondering that too." But it just makes me think of that where it's like you said, if all you're doing is just shoving a presentation of slides with some voiceover on it, then why aren't you just recording that, sending that out later?
Hmm.
The audience isn't getting anything out of that that is more important to than what's on their phone right now. And so I completely agree. So I think this is still something we all need to tackle as event planners is how are you making that a meaningful session? People are getting what they wanted out of it. You listened to them, and you gave them what they wanted, and then that is manifesting in the overall ROI that you're getting out of the entire event, which is what we all want and what our stakeholders want. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, let me offer a couple of things that come to mind with your example there,
Yeah.
because I think the thing that it does, that Q&A example that you've mentioned, it enables something else that is engaging in nature, which is um, it's happening live. It's not scripted,
Right.
and that is in nature more engaging. Presentations, I mean, whether people use speakers notes or not, they have slides most times. They know what they're about to say. A lot of times they have delivered this presentation a lot of times, or they have rehearsed and whatnot. And
Mhm.
so people see through it immediately.
Yeah.
Even panels, like a lot of these panels have the conversations pre-defined and discussed and whatnot. And so it's just another form of presentation,
Yeah.
supposedly more engaging, realistically, a lot less in some ways, because there's usually no slides that could be some visual engagement. It's just like
Yeah.
the same thing happening on stage. But that moment where somebody from the audience gets up and asks a question, it has some drama associated to it. And that's engaging. And they can ask a stupid question that, nobody else is thinking about. But who is that person?
Right.
They're walking into the mic. What are they about to ask? Who is going to address it? What are they going to say? I think there is some suspense there, which makes it engaging. Now, the second thought that came to mind as I was listening to your example is in some ways, the Denver version of Comic-Con has it easy because
Yeah.
they have a group of people who are very excited to be there
Yep.
and are coming there already pre and they're already engaged,
Oh yeah.
and the people who they put on stage, they're celebrities, they're people that those people want to hear from. Now
Right.
take this over to the typical conference, which will be a company that
Mhm.
is doing a user conference, and there's no celebrities on stage. Maybe they'll invest in a keynote, but
Right.
it won't be Brené Brown or, a
Right.
huge celebrity, right? And sometimes, I mean, I've definitely been in a lot of events that had that level of celebrities, and yeah, people will pay attention, but it requires a huge budget, and it's likely not going to be your typical keynote speaker at a typical user conference for most
Mhm.
companies. It will be somebody from the company, or a kind of lower level keynote speaker, and they're going to want to talk about their features or their product or other things like that. And so, like, you're already at a huge uphill battle. Sure, people will lift their
Yeah.
head up and look at Brené Brown or another celebrity at a Comic Con because they're so engaged and those are big celebrities. But how do you make your SVP from your company talk about your next set of features to a client base and prospects and make that engaging?
Yeah.
I think that is where the challenge is, and that is most of the content. Even
Yep.
if you do have a big keynote, it is one session out of like multi-day events sometimes. And so, I think that there's answers to that. Like I absolutely am confident that you can even make that a lot more engaging. Yeah, your example, I think in that way, they have it easier than most event planners.
Absolutely. I mean, we all can name a celebrity right now we'd love to be in the same room with and ask them questions like, "Oh, and then you see me too." It's not like you're just asking like an anonymous person on the internet. It's like, "No, but you got to see me and there's something, my little 15 minutes or, 5 seconds of fame or whatever." But
And speaking about podcasts, this is just like a personal anecdote. Earlier this year, Projectory was the opener for Scott Galloway. I don't know if you know Scott
yeah.
Galloway. Yeah. So I spend like 3 hours with the guy in my ear every week or so because, I've been following him and listening to a lot of um, his content. And so I was super excited to just like be backstage and run into him. I made sure that I need to be backstage, that I have the wristband that will give me access to backstage, that I have something that I have to do
Mhm.
backstage so I can run into it. And for days, I was thinking, okay, if I do run into him and I do see him, what do I say? Like, what would you say actually? Who is your celebrity that you would like love to meet backstage, and what would you tell them or ask
Oh,
them?
so one of my favorites is, and this is gonna age me, Kevin Kline is one of my favorite actors
Hmm.
ever, and I just have always wanted to, like, meet him in person and just kinda and just be like, What makes you awesome, dude? And which is such a fawning, silly fan question to ask. I honestly, you just put me on the spot too, because I'm like, ooh, I think I've just assumed I'm never going to meet him in person, so why bother? But I don't know. I have to put some thought into that. But I see, even you, this circles back to what we are saying. You were thoughtful and had intention with, knowing you were going to run
I
into
did
Scott.
fail that one though.
Did you?
I mean, I did meet him, but I could not come up with anything
Oh
meaningful
no.
that I could tell him or ask him. I did come up with it after the fact, but not in that moment and not leading up to it. But yeah, I did meet him, and yeah, I'm not like a kind of person that will want to do a selfie. Like I'm not on
Right.
social media, and I won't do that. One thing I knew for sure is it doesn't really matter what I will ask him or what I will say. He will immediately forget a conversation we had a moment after it's done. So the stakes were not high, but yeah, it
Well,
ended up being something very generic.
Oren, I'm just going to throw this out in the universe. Anyone who's listening, make sure if you know Scott Galloway, who knows? Who knows? Maybe he'll hear this episode and be like, oh, dang, he sounds pretty cool. I should go reach out, which in a little bit, we're going to get around to that about how people can reach out to you. But
Okay.
who knows? Like I say, there's power in the words here that we're sharing on Event Experience. So, but we are coming close to wrapping up our time together. Now, this leads me to the easiest and final question. Where can our listeners find and follow you online?
I'm on LinkedIn, Oren Berkovich. Uh, a lot of my channel for sharing things is actually Projectory,
Mm,
which if you haven't been to our company page, you should definitely check it out. There's constantly fun videos of us experimenting different ways of yawn-proofing events and making events more engaging. So those will be the two best places, I would say. But yeah,
nice.
generally I'm available. If you're in events, if you care about engagement, if any of the things that I've said resonated, I'd love to talk about it. I'm, very much passionate about these kinds of conversations. So
While we all tend to focus on the event itself, Oren's Skill Up advice asks us to take it further.
it may very much be to think about what happens after the event more than you think that you should, because events are a means to an end. It's never about the event. The event is supposed to unlock something in life, in real world, and that should be the starting point. Your event could run smoothly, people might love it, but if it leads nowhere, was it really worth it? Start with the goal and work backwards into how will that event enable it, because I think that will be a very important filter to make a lot of these choices that we've talked about in this podcast.
Thanks again to Oren Berkovich for joining us on Event Experience. And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying the show, we'd love to hear it. Connect with us on social and subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you're listening. Also, don't forget to share the show with your colleagues and friends. You can find transcripts of each episode and key takeaways on bizzabo.com/podcast. On behalf of the team, thank you. We'll gather again soon for a new episode of Event Experience.